I think the DePIN is a very sticky sector. I believe, and I know that a lot of projects are going to fail. I've seen projects that they just like put in their website, we're DePIN in the front of their landing page, just because they want to try to get traction from it.
DePIN, is it all hype or will it bring mass crypto adoption? In a nutshell, DePIN is the name for decentralized applications that use tokens to incentivize people to run and maintain physical infrastructure networks such as sensors, wireless infrastructure, energy grids, and other applications. The total market cap of DePIN tokens has surpassed $30 billion as of late. Today we chat to Daniel from Hotspotty, which is an all-in-one tool for managing decentralized wireless networks, to find out why DePIN is such a hot narrative right now. Is it all hype or is it the future? Let's go. Cool. Thank you for tuning into another episode of the Teach Me DeFi podcast. Today we'll be talking about DePIN and Hotspotty because we got Daniel here from Hotspotty. How are you, man?
Good, all good, excited. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, pleasure. And someone told me we'll be chatting in German today.
Natürlich, yeah.
Yeah?
That's it.
Is that so?
No, it's good. Let's switch back.
That's
back
all
to
you
English.
got?
Yes.
All right. But you lived in Berlin, I heard.
Yeah, I know. I lived in Berlin in 2015, until 2017. But I was working English. My life was always around English speaking people. So my English it's okay. I can get by. But yeah, not enough for an interview, I would say.
Yeah, well, next time maybe. How did you like Berlin? It's kind of different. I feel Berlin is a bit different than the rest of Germany, but how did you like it?
Yes, 100%. I really enjoyed the city itself. There's like a really interesting vibe. A lot of creative people getting together there, building cool things. Back at the time, there's already a lot of Bitcoin, Ethereum things happening in the city. So it was very interesting to be around that time. I think it was the first bull market that I was very excited about as well. I've been following crypto since 2012, I think late 2011,
Wow.
2012. But it was the first time that I said, okay, this is actually something really interesting. That's like, the introduction of smart contracts. And Berlin was a very exciting time for crypto at that time as well. But I think I didn't really fit so much with the German culture that decided to move to Portugal after that, be closer from the sun. I think the vitamin D really helped me think.
Yeah.
So moving to Portugal after that, I've been here for the past 5 years. But yeah, love Berlin. Miss the city a lot, but still rather be close to the ocean.
Yeah. No, I can get that. Not much ocean in Berlin, unfortunately.
Yeah.
None.
Some nice lakes though. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's true. You got lakes here and there in Germany in general, actually. Yeah, some are even man-made, but sometimes they you can tell, it's not as natural looking around there. So
Yeah, exactly.
it's
I mean,
not
it's a
great.
great place to enjoy those 2 weeks of summer you have in Berlin. Then back to work, basically.
True. So when was that when you lived there? Was it 2017 or when?
I moved in late 2015 until end of 2017. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think there's still a bit of a vibrant culture around crypto or in Berlin.
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, I haven't been back many times since I moved to Portugal. Then I see now Lisbon is actually a place that is quite booming in terms of crypto. Even DePIN, there's a lot of projects that are moving here. Half of the team actually from a blockchain called PEAQ. They are, I think, Berlin based and Lisbon based. So combining
Ah,
both
right.
worlds together. So yeah,
PEAQ is a chain on Polkadot that's gonna launch, right?
yeah, they're gonna go mainnet now. The Token 2049 in Dubai, I think it's gonna be their main launch. So I'm very excited for that. We're gonna be there as well. Whoever can join, it's gonna be a great event for sure.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, speaking of conferences, I think you and my colleague Rustam connected at ETH Denver. Is that right?
Yeah, no, it was cold but amazing. The ETH Denver was so interesting. We've been calling even Deep in Denver because I think most of the side events were some sort deep in related. And yeah, we had a great time brainstorming such an exciting time of the crypto world in our lives right now. Yeah, it's whoever lived Denver was had a good time for sure.
Yeah, I imagine probably you left inspired or motivated. You know, even like in
100%.
crypto, it's so much is like kind of faceless and not in person. Everything's remote. So I think when everyone gets together, it's a nice different kind of vibe.
Yeah, meeting people in person, it's a whole different aspect of, crypto. Like you said, crypto is everything's like a picture of a dog or something like that. But then once you meet the people behind the avatar, you can really build this relationship and then try to build something together. It's super exciting, right? And then every time you go to these conferences, you get to know new people, but also the old people that you've seen last year. It's kind of like a high school reunion, especially on like the DePIN ecosystem, which is like quite a small niche still. But it's growing a lot. But
Yeah.
we've been doing this for the past few years, and it feels like a high school reunion every time we go to one of those conferences.
Yeah. Well, what do you ask each other? You're like, what are you doing? Still deep in. Still deep in.
Yeah, yeah. What are you doing? Still deep in how's the wife? How's the kids? Because you already get to know the people so well throughout the years, and then it becomes
Right.
like a big family. It's super exciting.
That's awesome. Yeah, I had actually heard that there was lots of buzz around DePIN at ETH Denver. I think Rustam told me as well. Perhaps we can kick it off with that. Just like for viewers that are not that familiar yet with that term and what it means and what's kind of behind it. Can you tell us what DePIN is and why it's a bit more in the limelight now or the
Yeah, for
spotlight?
sure. Yeah, I mean, DeepIn stands for Decentralized Physical Infrastructure Networks. It's basically a new concept of people own infrastructure, but it's not necessarily like a new concept in the terms of there are projects out there that have been building some sort of DeepIn for many, many years. For example, there's one that I interviewed last week. We have a DeepIn
Mm,
Hub podcast I'm going to plug later, but it's a
cool.
project called StorJ. They started actually doing a decentralized storage platform since 2014. They released, I think, 2017. It's basically like companies that, let me rephrase that. In the past, if you want to deploy some sort of infrastructure, let's say Amazon, right? They have to deploy the entire infrastructure, hire people, but also they take 100% of the rewards, right? The profits of that project. What if we shift something and instead of like one company having to deploy all the capital but taking 100% of the rewards, this company just focus on the infrastructure in the code, right? And actually people buy the hardware, deploy the hardware in a decentralized way, and also they share the profits of that company. So it's kind
Mm,
of like, let's say for the more DeFi people, it's more like a DAO, but actually people are not just voting with tokens, but they're deploying physical hardware, physical infrastructure, and they're being rewarded for that. Um, and this narrative actually, let's say the genesis of DePIN started, I would say, one company called Helium. I think a lot of people have heard about them. In the beginning, it was called DY. We call it decentralized wireless, right? And this name actually started evolving throughout the time. There was a company, there was multi-coin capital that came with POPW, proof of physical work. Then there was a fund called Lattice that have TPIN, token incentivized physical networks. And then to the end, like, we got DPIN. That's one name that everybody kind of agree on. But it's basically this idea that instead of one company owning all the resources and the profits, we share these with the people. And because of the people deploying the infrastructure, there is like a massive amount of opportunities that can be uh, show from that. Helium, for example, was the fastest rollout of an infrastructure in history. They deployed 1 million devices in around 2 months, 2 years, right? Like it's crazy. Around the world, we have LoRa connectivity, just because one company built the software, but people actually, bought the hardware, climbed roofs, installed the antennas. So yeah, that's more or less the what Deepin is, and it's something that we've been breathing and very excited about for the past 3 years. And yeah, I think it's just getting started.
right. How does that work then? For example, with Helium, with those devices you mentioned, you buy the device and then you run a piece of software or something on it, and you get or run a node, and then you get rewards, or how does it work?
Yeah, hold on a sec.
Yeah.
Here, for example, this is a helium hotspot, right? It's from a company called Rack. This is basically like a Wi-Fi router. Let's think like that. Has an antenna. I plug to the internet. I plug to power, and it creates like a wireless signal. For helium specifically, there'll be something called LoRa, which is like a specific technology for sensors. Basically, one antenna can reach, let's say, 50 kilometers of range, so it's pretty long range. Um, so the way is that you are building this network, but companies who want to actually use the network to send the information from their sensors can use helium. So let's say the city has a park meters. You know, park meters around the city. When you park, you need to pay, and that park meter needs to send that information to the Amazon servers or anywhere that the government is managing that. How usually it's done is like you need to buy a SIM card. The SIM card is going to be connected to cell towers, and you have to pay Vodafone, for example, for or T-Mobile for that service, which is quite expensive. You have contracts, very complex. If you do something like Helium, then you don't need to ask permission. You know, you don't need to have contracts. You just pay for the data that you're using. And me, who deployed the Helium hotspot, a percentage of that reward, that money that people are paying to use the network, go to the people who are deploying the network, right? So that's like a basic idea. There are different projects. There's, for example, Nadix. Nadix is a project that you just get your phone, you put in your car. As you drive, it analyzes everything that's happening. And then you can
Hmm.
get, for example, where there are potholes, supermarkets, restaurants, get information on the phone numbers, and you can build kind of like a decentralized Google Street View. And then the
Hmm.
company goes with this data and sell to companies who need that kind of like up to date map information. uh,
Mm.
so this company makes a profit from selling this data and share the profit with the users who actually are mapping it, right? So that's the idea of a decentralization of infrastructure, etc.
Right. So in that case, Helium kind of provides Wi-Fi connectivity, like an alternative to, like you said, using a centralized provider like telecom or something. And then you kind of pay for the, if you use that network, you pay for the data you are pushing through.
Exactly. Exactly. The
Okay.
demand side pay, and pay can pay in like helium tokens, for example, which like help with the whole tokenomics. But the way it is, like, it's very easy and it's very frictionless to get started. Whilst if you want to do like a park meters in the city, you need to have like a contract with like a Vodafone, and it gets much more complicated and more costly as well.
Right. So what does it actually, how does it actually work, for example, for those, for some parking meters to start using Helium? Like, what do they have to do?
So basically, for in the example of park meter, you're just gonna have like a little sensor that works in the same frequency as these devices, which like it's a very common out there in the market. It's called LoRa, stands for long range sensors. And then you can go to like Helium console. There Helium is just one example. There are other projects doing similar approach. So basically, you buy credits. We can be with credit card, can be with tokens, for example, and you just connect that to the network that automatically whenever you send some information from your park meter is going to show up in like a dashboard that Helium built. And then you can connect that information to some sort of server that you're going to send that information to, your database, APIs, etc. So it's very seamless. And the cool thing is that Helium has coverage almost everywhere in the world right now. So you can just pick it up and start using. You don't need to ask permission or contracts or anything. And yeah, of course, Helium is just one of the first projects. Now, with the advance of the DP narrative, there's over 100 projects, and it's the number is actually growing. Projects solving different problems with using this idea that people get rewarded by deploying some sort of infrastructure.
Mm. I think that's an interesting idea because it sort of, um, this incentivization does create a, or the idea is that it creates a bit of a flywheel, right? Because you sort of, you incentivize the supply side of supplying some sort of infrastructure, so people will do it, and hopefully demand increases, and that drives revenue again for the providers. I think, is that
Exactly.
the idea? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Okay. And in terms of helium, for example, do you have to, how does the payment work then? Like the parking meter company, do they have to use blockchain and buy helium tokens and pay, or how does it work?
They can do that as well, but they can just use a credit card. So they have like a bridge. They can use credit card to do that, because that's a very important thing that we've been seeing in the past, is that we need to reduce the friction for the demand side to work with those projects, right? Because at the end of the day, I don't, as a customer of the Helium network or storage network, for example, I don't care if they're running on a blockchain or a centralized solution, as long as it's safe, fast, and cheap, right? And that's what a lot of these blockchain projects can provide. These three things. But they need to have some sort of like very friendly front end that people can use.
Mm,
Otherwise, what's the point? Like you're not gonna onboard big companies to do that, because that's a lot of friction, right? Especially a lot of companies, sometimes they're still a bit afraid of interacting with crypto. But then
mm-hmm.
if everything like was with credit card, you can see it like build like a seamless platform, like a front end for them. Then it's no brainer, because it's cheap, faster, and more secure, right?
Right, right. Well, speaking of front ends, can you tell us a bit about Hotspotty? Because I know, well, actually, maybe you can also clear that up. That if you're only like focused on the Helium network or not, and basically, what is Hotspotty? What are you guys doing?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's a good question. We started back in 2020. Uh, I'm an electrical engineer. I've been into crypto for a long time, and then when my co-founder Max actually told me about the project Helium, I had like this like light bulb moment that I was like, okay, this is actually gonna disrupt a lot of things. And immediately I started thinking, okay, how can I get involved with this project? I immediately shift to join their Discord. It was a very small community at the time. I spent all the time like talking to them, learning, teaching. I was lucky enough that I already had a lot of the hardware at home for
Mm,
building a LoRa device. So I built my own hotspot back in before
cool.
like you could buy one. And we started getting very interested about this project, to the point that we deployed over 100 devices between Portugal and Belgium. But there was a problem, right? Like a problem that we're having, but a lot of people are having as well, which is, how can I manage my devices? Because the information is alive on the blockchain, if the device is online or not. But how can you figure out where is the best place to put them? How can I pay the people after that? Because what we started doing, we call it the hosting model, is that if I want to put three hotspots, I don't have three houses most of the time, right? So what I do is I put one in my house, but I put in one in my friend's house, put one in my mom's house. At the end of the day, I need to pay those people for some rewards. What usually happens is that I'm gonna pay you in like 50% of the rewards, right? Maybe your mom, you do 30% or more. Uh,
Hmm.
at the end of the month, you need to calculate how much you need to pay each person, and that gets quite complicated if you need to do everything like spreadsheets, like download this information from the blockchain. Um, so that's when actually Hotspotty was born. Initially, it was called Hotspot Management.xyz, and I just released like an MVP very early, but it was working, and a lot of people started using because there was like a big demand there. And well, okay, there's something here. Then I joined, like I invited Max, my co-founder, to build Hotspotty, and when we started like the second version, which was basically the best explorer, I would say in crypto in general, but for especially for Helium. And
Hmm.
with that, the Helium network is growing. Our user base grew like crazy. Was very exciting times. We built like way that you can plan, you can put virtual hotspots on the map. You can see how that would change like the network. We did a lot of line of sight simulation, so you can see if you put hotspot here, what's going to be the range of the signal. So we basically built for 2 years a lot of tooling around Helium. um, and it's a project that is still alive. Hotspot is alive. It's still growing. Have new users coming every day. But one thing that happened in 2022 is that we realized that because we've been so in depth in this ecosystem, we end up knowing a lot of the deployers, companies, projects, investors. Everyone in the ecosystem, and there was new projects coming along as well. Like there was I call it like OG deepin projects like Demo, Hive Mapper, and others, and realize, okay, how can I help those projects the same way we did with Helium? Because I believe we were crucial to get Helium to the next step, because basically people were using Hotspotty more than they were using Helium Explorer in the beginning, right? We built so many content, so much like content education improvements, that we realized that we have something there. How can we help other projects? And initially, we're thinking about building fleet management for all those projects. But then we realized that this would be super hard, because we spent 2 years building for Helium. We knew like everything, like we reverse
Yeah.
engineered the Erlang code of the blockchain, how things were working in order to build Hotspotty. But if you try to do this for 3 projects more, it's going to be crazily hard. Um, and what we realized that, okay, maybe the best thing we can do with our expertise, like we know hardware, we know supply chain, fulfillment, blockchain, crypto, every aspect of the layer. But we don't want to be one single project. Like that's why we don't call ourselves necessarily a DePIN project, but we call ourselves, we're like with the glue that gets every DePIN together. And with
Mm-hmm.
that, we decided to release something what we call DePIN Hub, deepinhub.io,
Mm-hmm.
um,
I'll
which
put that in the
started,
show notes.
yeah, thanks, which is the basically initially is a news aggregator that we started as the first step, that we're collecting. We have like a project index with over 100 projects. Everything that happened in the news section, RSS feeds, YouTube videos, everything gets parsed by our platform using a lot of AI stuff to do like summaries for those news, etc. That was the first step.
Mm-hmm.
Then we started something we call Deepin Hub. Deepin Hub podcast. The Deepin Hub podcast is a podcast that gets released every week, where I interview founders, investors, deployers, really trying to bring more eyes to different projects.
Mm.
And the next step that we're gonna want to do is a Deepin Launchpad, which is actually the main thing they were trying to build for, which is Deepin is very, there are too many new projects coming every day. How can you know with good projects from bad projects? How you can see good opportunities that are coming to the network nowadays? It's really hard. And because we are like kind of in the center of everything, a lot of projects come back to us actually like, oh, how can I be listed on Deepin Hub? How can we
Mm.
work together? And then we can do like some due diligence in those projects and then get them into our launchpad. And the launchpad is
Mm.
going to be a way that we can help those projects like get started. But it's a bit different from regular launchpads, because when you think about a launchpad, it's more about tokens, right? People to get early access to token. But when you have the deepin narrative, it's many more layers. Usually has a hardware involved. So our idea is, how can we find really good users that can help those deepin projects, but also be the first ones to get the tokens, but also the first one to get the hardware, and making sure that those people are going to deploy in good places, and really help the project succeed, right? So that's what, I mean, I talk a lot because I get
No,
excited
good.
about this. Yeah,
Yeah.
but this is a little bit of TLDR of Hotspotty.
Right. Yeah. No, that's lovely. I'd rather have a guest that talks a lot than a guest that doesn't. You know, we don't
Yeah.
we don't want silence on air. Um, no, sweet. That's really interesting. And did you provide this sort of node management tool? I suppose you could call it.
Yeah.
Um, did you provide this like just like as a common good, or are you monetizing it somehow? How does it work?
Yeah, I mean, this since we bootstrapped the project for 2 years. I mean, we actually managed um, to hire people with the profits that we did from the tokens that we're mining, etc. So we released Hotspot in the beginning as a free software, but then as we wanted to be our full time job, it became a SaaS. So the way it is that you pay a regular subscription fee with Stripe, and then you can use this as a tool to manage all your devices. We have customers that have over 1,000 devices they are managing on the platform. Um, but yeah, we definitely can be only a public good because we don't have a token. We don't yet. We don't. We don't have ways to make a profit just for running the system. It takes a lot of money to build it and maintain and manage like servers, etc. So we decided to do as a service that, of course, it makes needs to make sense for people to pay for it. which a
Mm,
lot of people do, right? Like the idea is that you're going to pay less for the platform, then it's going to save you time plus peace of mind at the end of the month when you need to pay people. So that's why
yeah.
we haven't had problems with the fees and everything that we're doing. And surprisingly, it's still growing. It's very exciting because we at Hotspotty, we want the fleet management to be our legacy product. Like we're gonna maintain it because it brings a lot of value. It's growing, like I said, but our focus right now it's 100% back to DePIN Hub because we believe that the DePIN narrative is it's the one that I like to say that we want to have your mom and everybody's mom on DePIN Hub because it's something that people can understand, right? It's not so technical. So we're going to maintain the fleet manage going, and we're going to focus on the DePIN Hub to really go grow the whole ecosystem, all the different projects, not necessarily just one, right? Because
Mm.
I think that's what we're trying to focus now.
Okay. Okay. Let me ask you about that actually. Obviously Deepin is a bit of a hot narrative at the moment. I'm not sure if you saw it. Like a few weeks ago, Ethereum co-founder Vitalik Buterin shared some thoughts on like Deepin projects in a post. I don't know if that was after ETH Denver. Maybe he saw all the buzz there or the side
Yes.
events. I don't know. He kind of questioned which projects in the Deepin category are considered most likely to succeed, and said that this category seems to be a rebranding of concepts that have existed for like a decade, such as various decentralized Uber like platforms or the one you mentioned with Store J, I believe. But they never took off. And he asked why these projects now would gain traction if they haven't in the past. So I was just wondering what you think about this. I mean, you're part of this movement, right? What do you think is different today? Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of things. First, the blockchain technology has evolved a lot, right? And on the Vitalik's thing, a lot of projects that were built on top of Ethereum, they had to change because the gas fees were too expensive.
Mm,
Um, Uber-like projects, it's I think I would say that taking on the Uber approach, Uber is one of the hardest projects to do, centralized or decentralized, because you have like a very fine balance between supply and demand. That's going to be really hard. Actually, I'm using the hat of a company called Teleport. Just like
mhm,
quick plug to them. Great guys. Which they're doing is they're building actually like a decentralized Uber like, you know,
mhm,
and they're getting a
mhm,
lot of traction. I think they just have one city in the US that they're testing right now. uh, Projects like StoreJ, like I mentioned before, they've proven product market fit. They are profitable. They're bringing money. They're growing, right? Um, Helium, for example, the IoT part was a bit. They built the biggest network in the world very quickly, but they actually found the best product market fit for them was the Helium Mobile. You know, the people actually deploy cell coverage around cities, and then they close a partnership with T-Mobile. But it's kind of like a no-brainer if you are in the US to have a Helium mobile account because it's cheap. It's like $20 a month, unlimited data, and
mhm.
you can actually make money from it because you can activate a function that you're going to be helping them map where is coverage or when there is not. So it almost paid by itself, right?
Mm.
Um, I would say the deepin is it's much harder than other like decentralized projects because there are so many more layers that you need to nail
Yeah.
down, right? Supply demand is a big one, but also sometimes you have hardware, you have fulfillment management, etc. There's a lot of new layers of things that you need to do well to
Yeah.
succeed. But we're seeing that things are actually they're happening now. Maybe when he was thinking about these like old projects, and also hardware takes time, right? That takes much more than supply like a software. If you want to update the hardware, software, or even the development of a physical device takes much more time because each iteration you need to like send for the manufacturing, then you need to send back, you need to solder, you need to test, etc. But we're seeing right now that there are a lot of projects that they're getting like product market fit, and
Mm.
it's working, it's growing. I mean, there's I could list many. For example, GeoNet is one that you install this like antenna in your house in your roof, and you're doing like a GPS correction system that people I think on a range of 30 kilometers around you can get to like sub centimeter the accuracy on your GPS because of that. So and they're growing. They're closing partnership with like farmers, like a lot of companies that need precise like geolocation, and it's happening, right? I think that's a cool thing to know. And another thing is like companies fail, right? Like how many startups that are not Web3 fail in the past. um,
Yeah.
so I
It feels a
think it,
bit,
yeah.
yeah, sorry. It feels a bit like almost like a franchising model versus like building a supermarket chain yourself, right? So in terms of providing all that hardware yourself and running it to create a network that has geographic coverage versus getting other people to have a stake in the hardware and deploy it themselves, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually a very good analogy because you are the chain, and the companies are in the chain. The people are building, deploying new projects, new locations, basically, right? Because what we've seen from that is that there are a lot of people who end up building companies based on the projects, right? Like we know, for example, on in the Helium times, there was multiple companies that spun out of this idea of like, okay, I'm gonna deploy thousands of devices around this location, and I'm gonna get a profit from that. So I'm gonna sometimes even like hire people on a call to fix a device if it goes down, you know. So it's kind of like a web, like the sharing economy 2.0, basically, right?
Mm. Ah, I
And
like
much more
that.
frictionless. Yeah.
Mm. Uh, and I wonder, I mean, I think that that's definitely not a DePIN problem, but just an overall crypto problem. That most of these networks aren't generating real protocol revenue to be like sustainable, right? Like most of the rewards are paid out of inflation, so the projects print tokens and distribute them. So obviously not a sustainable way to create an economy in the long run. You need eventually like the fees that users or the demand to pay the supply side, right? Um, and I had read a report on DePIN, but I think a year ago or something, which kind of also analyzed it from that side to look at how much of it is how much protocol revenue is really being generated on these major DePIN projects. I think Helium was included as well. I think, but I'm not sure. I think it was still pretty like on the small side, like most of it was still like inflation rewards. But I was keen to hear your take on that. What does it look like at the moment on that front?
Yeah, no, it's definitely there's like the inflationary part in the beginning, right? Because a lot of projects they have the chicken and egg problem to solve, right? Um, Nobody's going to use the network if there is no network. Nobody's going to deploy the network if there's no usage, right? So that's how a lot of projects come up with this. Like they find like ways to reward the early adopters by providing coverage, even if it's for testnet, right? Because it's very important to try to bootstrap that information. What Helium did, for example, with they call it proof of coverage, is that even though there's not a lot of demand coming yet, I'm going to use my device to talk to other devices and then prove that those devices are where they actually say they are, right? Because if you have a lot of devices, they should be talking to each other. So Helium built the proof of coverage, which is like they make a private key. They split this private key in two parts. One they send through the network, through the internet, and the second part they send through the air. If those the other device get those two packages and be able to with the private key, you know, encrypt the message, then they prove that they received that message. So this way, basically, Helium was proving that the network was being generated, was being expanded, and rewarding users for that in a way that as long as the more demand starts to grow, then that rewards for proof of coverage would go down. A lot of projects, that's the way that they bootstrap the initial steps of the project, right? They need to find ways to reward those early stage users, and then those users they deploy the network because they think, okay, I'm going to make this token now, and then in the future those projects are going to have demand, and the token is going to be sustainable, and hopefully the token that I have now is going to go up as well. So being an early adopter has a lot of advantages in most of the times, And I mean, we see this with like airdrops as well right now in all the different projects, right? Like I want to be early in this project because like, if I connected my wallet to this thing, then I'm gonna hopefully get an airdrop. Um, but on the sustainability of the deepins, I think as long as those projects manage to get the demand in, that should be okay, right? Because a lot of DeFi projects, they're just like money for the sake of money. You're only gonna get up if people are buying the token or burning the token. It's all about financial instruments to try to keep the price going up, right? You sell more, you buy more. There's the demand side, where in deepin you actually have, you're building like a value, like a, some sort of infrastructure, and people are actually putting money in the network, not just for the sake of the token, like for
Mm,
bunny token, but actually for using whatever this project is building for,
mm,
like Nadix with the map information, or Hive Mapper as well. They have a similar project, or there's a lot of projects with now it's a very strong narrative is also AI, decentralized GPU mining, that
mm. Yeah, can you talk a bit about that? I know render is a big project in that area. I
absolutely
think
that.
isn't it something like you basically you share idle resources on your GPU for others to use?
Yes, I mean there. I can list like many projects. There is like Render. Render is one of the first ones. Um, there is IO.net. There is Nosana. There is Ether. Many projects. What the idea is that people have idle resources in their house, right? Especially if you, let's say, you are a gamer, you like to play some Counter Strike on the weekends or something, but you work most of the time, so your computer is just sitting there doing nothing. And with this new AI narrative that's come up since like 1.5 year ago, the demand for GPU processing to train, LLMs and like stable diffusion images and stuff has just spiked. And it's quite expensive first to look for this infrastructure. Also, it's very hard for projects to like. I want to build my own, like servers to mine to not mine to
Yeah.
process all this data, but it's really expensive and it's really hard to find. Sometimes you can't even find, right, with the like the
Yeah, yeah,
GPU
it's there's a
shortage.
shortage, right?
But still, there are people out there with a lot of like their computer not doing anything. Um, so what these projects do is like, how can we, in a decentralized way and permissionless, same thing as other like deepin projects, utilize your idle resource. So one project that we have on the podcast as well is Nosana. That was one of the first ones I did that does decentralized GPU. Just you run a software, they keep sending you like bits of LLM models to train or in stable diffusion, and you get paid for it. So for all the projects, right now they're still kind of like a test net, because but I think they're gonna have a lot of demand, because I mean you can. The cool thing about AI is that you can never have too much demand supply, in a way that if a project really really wants to build like the biggest training set, you can use the whole GPU of the world to do that, right? And I think that's a very interesting angle and something that I'm very very bullish for as well.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, it is an interesting development for sure. Um, what is it about Peak Network, that DePIN project Peak Network on Polkadot that is exciting? Because I feel like I've been hearing and seeing more about it recently.
I mean, there are a lot of different blockchains to build a project on top of. There's a lot of like legacy projects that are built on Ethereum, but then
Mm,
I would say 99% of those projects have the problem with the gas fees, for example. Then they jump to a layer twos, uh, but at the end of the day, all those layer twos, they're just like regular blockchains. What PIC's trying to do is build a blockchain that is focused solely on deeping projects, because you have the physical hardware aspect, you have the location. They build like a blockchain. They're building a blockchain that's gonna solve a lot of the problems that deeping projects, whenever they're building on other chains, they need to solve by their own, right? They need to build their own. So the idea is that PIC is building a lot of functions and utilities that are going to solve a lot of the problems that all these projects on the blockchains are having, without you needing to build your own solution. So that's like a big, interesting narrative for them. Um, that's one that
can you give a
I'm
few
very, very.
examples, like what sort of functions? I assume you mean like things that have to be. Um, like just this connection between the crypto tokens and the physical the hardware. There's probably things
Exactly.
that are similar when you have different kinds of deepen projects. Um,
Yes, that's exactly. That's something that PEAQ calls machine ID.
mhm.
It's a function to actually prove the device is actually the device that is saying it is, right?
Ah,
Because that's a hard thing on the hardware side is like, how can you prove that this device is the device that they say it is? How can I just not clone this device and have multiple? There are a
mm,
lot of ways people do, and then I haven't deployed anything on Peak because I mean I'm not a project, but by talking to them, there's a lot of functions that they're developing to help on that side.
mm.
Um, yeah, I mean there's a lot of projects joining Peak every day as well. It's been very interesting to see them. They are, like I said, they are based in Berlin and also Lisbon. Some of their teams actually almost like a neighbor. We get together whenever we can, and yeah, it's a great team, great minds, and I'm excited to see where they're gonna go.
And is there any way to think about how are there other competitors similar to a Peak that want to provide the infrastructure for lots of deepen projects to launch? I know Helium is, I think, on Solana, but
Yeah,
yeah, can you talk
yeah,
about?
I would say that three. I mean, there's Peak and there's IoTex. IoTex one that have been around since 2016, 2017 as well, and they're 100% focused on DePIN. So I would say
Mhm.
a project that want to build on the like build a DePIN project should definitely check both of them. And the best thing is there is something called composability. There you can use other DePIN projects, but you can also use different functions on different blockchains, right? Um, a lot of like I would say that the chain that is growing the fastest for deepin is Solana because you know there's a lot of excitement. It's very easy. It's very cheap. People start with their meme coins, and then it's very easy for you to jump into to other deepin projects because of that. But what we're seeing is that projects they chose one of their it's kind of like a main chain where they're going to have the native tokens, but then they work with a lot of different projects. We've seen like projects I don't remember the name now, but they like for example we are in Solana or like in Polygon, but then we have functions from Peak, we have functions from IoTex, and then in a way we're helping the whole ecosystem grow, right? Because part of the things that you do, you're going to help the Peak ecosystem. Part of the things you're going to do is going to be on the IoTex ecosystem, but then the main token is released on Solana. So a lot of things you don't even need to. If you're interacting with that project, maybe you're just going to do Solana. But there's a lot of things that, you know, like supporting blockchains around, and because Solana is it's like a general purpose blockchain, a lot of things are going to be solved by Peak and IoTex and not by Solana. Or you need to build your own, right?
Mm.
Um,
Well, so if we think about the deepen market, what do you think where deepen will be in 3 to 5 years? You know, will it be hot air, just a narrative that fizzles out again, like so many in the past, or do you think it'll bring mass adoption or something in between?
yeah, definitely. I think the DePIN is a very sticky sector. Um, I believe and I know that a lot of projects are going to fail, especially those projects that, because, like you said, it's a very hot narrative right now. I've seen projects that they just like put in their website, we're deep in the front of their landing page, just because they want to try to get traction from it. Or like, let's just find some angle that we can call ourselves deep in so we can jump on the bandwagon, right? So a lot of those projects, hopefully they're going to succeed, but a lot of them, I'm sure it's going to fail. But what I think is going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years, it's a lot of those projects really finding product market fit, getting revenue in, getting like the demand side figured out. Because I think that's the hardest part. Like you can,
Mm,
it's not that it's easy to build a dipping project, but have a sustainable inflow of cash by providing that infrastructure is something that takes time. So I believe that in the next 3 to 5 years, that's we're going to see a lot of things happening in that sense. Um, a lot of we've seen right now already have many accelerator programs right happening to try to help the founders build. Like I myself am part of three, like just trying to help the projects grow and learn about things that they can solve. But yeah, I think the product market fit and sustainable inflow of cash, the one thing that I really want to see in the next few years. And I think those projects who manage to do that, they're going to do super well. um, yeah, I think more and more excitement, getting more projects into DePIN. Because one thing that we see a lot is usually a founder, they come in two aspects most of the time. They either understand the blockchain and don't understand so well the hardware, want to solve a problem, or they understand very well the problem and they have like a hardware solution, but they don't understand blockchain, right? So a lot of times we're trying to work with those projects and get them to combine both sides that fix their weaknesses and release a project that has good tokenomics, inflow of cash from the demand side, but also has a good hardware, etc. Um, yeah, I do. I don't think DePIN is going anywhere. It's very, let's say, cycle resilient as well, right?
Yeah.
Because if one of those projects have the income from like regular fiat coming for the project, it doesn't matter if we're in a bull cycle or in a bear cycle because there is
Yeah.
demand for real world usage, right? Like for example,
Mm.
just because we are in the bear market doesn't mean you're not going to use your cell phone. So
Yeah.
in this
It's
way,
not like
helium.
you're buying Sol to buy some meme coins, right? It's
Yeah, exactly. Like you need like basic infrastructure you're gonna need regardless. So Helium Mobile, for example, doesn't matter if people if they were in the bull and the bear market. Of course, they can have some excitement in the token, but the demand and the influx of fiat is gonna be coming because there's this demand, right? So I think that's one like a very very big different thing from other crypto projects, and that's something why I think like Deepin is it's here to stay, and we're just getting started.
All right. Well, you sure made the case for it, and I hope it will play out like that. I think that would be an amazing way to intro people to crypto through something that's, like you said, easily understandable. Like I can share this GPU resources, or I can run this piece of hardware, and I get rewarded for it. It's easy to wrap your head around it. Thank you so much, Daniel. In terms of if people want to get involved, use Hotspotty, or your podcast and everything. It's time to plug. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, we have hotspotty.net, which is the main website that we're still working on the new landing page. But I want to
Yeah,
invite everyone to check deepinhub.io and go to our Deepin Hub podcast as well, where every week we're releasing a new podcast. And one thing that I want to make sure that you guys pay a lot of attention is make sure to join the Deepin Hub newsletter. If you go to the website, there's a little form on top of that because there's going to be a lot of not just a lot of valuable content but a lot of great opportunities for all the listeners out there to make some extra income because there's a lot of cool things that we're cooking, and make sure to don't miss out on those opportunities because it can be very good.
sweet,
Yeah,
cool. Well, you heard it. If you want to stay up to date on DePIN, I think that's a perfect way to do it. If you're a project listening right now or watching, and you'd be interested to come on our show, please reach out. We're always keen to have new guests on. Also, if you're a DePIN project, perhaps Daniel, you know a few that would like to.
absolutely.
All right. Awesome. Thank you for coming on the show. Anytime again.
Thanks, man. It was a pleasure. Let's do this.